Center, and this is the Health and Biosciences panel. So kind of for our agenda today, we'll start with some introductions and then do a panel discussion, and then we'll get into student questions and answers, and then we'll end with some closing remarks in the main Zoom. So I think we only have 3 of our panelists here at the moment. So we'll just go ahead and start with you, Dr. Lin, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our students.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for the invitation. So my name is Mercury Lin. I'm a pathologist at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And prior to joining my medical group at Cedars, I was a medical officer in the United States Navy for about 10 years, so just slightly over a decade. I'm a native of California. Grew up in the San Gabriel Valley area. I did my undergrad at UC Irvine and did my medical school at New York Medical College.
So thank you for that, Dr. Lin. And then we'll go ahead and pass it on to Behram.
Hi, so my name is Behram Bukai. I'm an R&D engineer at Inari Medical, also a SoCal native. I started my journey at USC in biomedical engineering, graduated there. Then I did my master's at Boston University, also in biomedical engineering. I started my career off at Medtronic Neurovascular, and a few years ago, I came to be at Inari Medical.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And then finally, we have Dr. Nast.
Good evening, everyone. I grew up in Camarillo, California. I moved there from Pennsylvania when I was a kid. Went to USC undergrad and then back to Philadelphia for med school, my first residency. And then I was actually practiced as an OBGYN in the Air Force for about 8 years before I decided I wanted to be a flight surgeon. So they let me be a flight surgeon, and I liked it so much that I did another couple residencies in aerospace medicine and occupational medicine, and then retired from the Air Force after 21 years and have been now practicing occupational environmental medicine and some aerospace medicine and doing some consulting, mostly as an independent contractor.
Awesome. So it's great to hear about all of your guys' roles in healthcare and just kind of what you do and how you got there. But now we kind of want to get a little bit more into, I guess, the nitty-gritty of the work. And so what does like a realistic day in your life look like? And I'll start with you, Dr. Lin, and then we'll pass it to Behram and then end with you, Dr. Nast.
Yeah, sure. Well, so we usually have idea what our day, what we imagine it will be like. But obviously, many of us know it never turns out the same way. But so generally speaking, for me as a pathologist, I don't have a clinic, so I don't see patients directly. I deal with actually patient samples. I would typically show up in the office somewhere between 7:30 to 8 a.m. and I would either finish some of the pending reports, and then while waiting for the new material to come in, and then I'll be assessing the new material and see what's going on. Would report back the preliminary diagnosis, and then obviously pending some additional studies. So even though I don't see patients directly as a pathologist, I work pretty closely with the clinical colleagues. So I'll be talking to other doctors about their patients. And then usually, in the afternoon, again, continuing doing more work. If there are times available, I would get involved with some, clinical research. But again, my day is almost all of it is involved in diagnosis. So in a clinical work, and depending on how busy we are, sometimes we wrapped up around 6 p.m. or sometimes even later. And then in healthcare medicine, the other thing we do is we have to ensure there's adequate services available, during the weekends. So we also take turn, taking calls. So that's kind of a typical day. So about like 55 or so 60 hours a week.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And then Behram, go ahead and share with us too.
Sure. So my experience is as an engineer in the healthcare field. So I work in medical device companies, and there's a lot of engineering that goes on. It's a little more of a variable role. Being an R&D early on, we're ideating and doing prototypes. So a lot of work in the lab, figuring out what to make and how to do it. So we work with other types of engineers, and at Inari, a lot of physicians, commonly interventional radiologists and cardiologists. So part of that is doing bench work with them, hands-on testing of prototypes, seeing what works and what doesn't. And as we mature, we go and show these prototypes to physicians at animal labs, get them to try them in a clinically significant manner and see if we're on the right track. And once we solidify our designs, there's more building and testing. And as we launch products after we get FDA clearance or international approvals, we often go into the field teaching sales reps as well as physicians how to get used to our devices and learn from initial clinical cases. So days can vary wildly based on the phase of these types of projects that we work on. Right now, I'm working on a product that's probably 6 months away from being used in the clinic. So a lot of testing and documentation. At other times, I've been in the field all day or training physicians and reps. So it can really vary a lot.
Awesome. And then Dr. Nass, we'll pass it on to you.
So I typically will work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in the clinic at the local health system in the occupational health clinic. So it's myself, and usually I don't overlap with the other physician. And we also have 2 nurse practitioners and 2 physician assistants who work with us. And I usually see about 20 patients a day, and it's pretty much all work injuries and follow-up for work injuries. But I also do employment exams, including FAA aviation medical exams, and then some consults with employers. The other days I generally have off, but I do have a situation where I work with Premise Health, and they have clinics in various companies, and this one that I go to happens to be Lockheed Martin Space Systems, and so I work collaboratively there with that staff, serving as the medical director. And then I do consulting still for the Air Force in regards to aviation and pregnancy, because I guess I'm one of the few people who are boarded in aerospace medicine and obstetrics and gynecology. So that's a completely remote work, and it's kind of as needed, and it can vary from a couple hours a week is usually what I contribute to that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. At first, when you started with the you only work Thursdays and Wednesdays and Fridays, I was like, oh, 3-day work week sounds so nice. But I'll go ahead and ask the second question. What are the challenges and benefits of working in your industry? And then this time we'll start with you, Dr. Lin, and then back to Behram, and then to you, Dr. Nast.
So your challenges. So I'm fortunate in my situation here where a lot of the billing issues I don't have to deal with directly. We have support staff for it, but I do know folks who are in smaller practice where they have to deal with the billing issues. But that's something again I don't have to deal with where I practice. And then you also ask about. I'm sorry. What's the first part of the question?
Just the challenges or the benefits of working
Benefits.
in that industry.
So I think benefits is I really enjoy what I do. I find kind of what I do to be very rewarding in terms of being able to, if there's a patient, and again, I see the specimens I get are not just from my own hospital, it's from all over this country. So I can be working with a doctor in a different state, and there's a patient who is sick. And based on my assessment, I can then work with the clinician in the remote area, come up with the best treatment for the patient.
So in my case, I would say, starting with some of the challenges, I guess, in today's like post-COVID workplace, I think having a job that's 100% in office is sometimes different from a lot of professionals. Not so in a lot of healthcare, I think, but a lot of engineers, especially in software, are working from home, or at least part of the time. Um, at other places, you know, sometimes there's that flexibility, but as an R&D engineer, being accessible and having a lab to tinker in is pretty required. And I think accepting that is maybe now like a lifestyle decision, but for some, you know, a challenge. But on the flip side, there's a lot of positives. I don't get to be someone who directly impacts patients like the physicians on the panel, but I think it's one of the next best things. I've heard enough times, especially at my time at NRA, oh, this product you're coming out with, this is going to be a game changer. And so there's, you know, a sense of pride that we did the right thing, helping people that in some cases weren't being treated as well before, and just, you know, designing something that someone says is really cool, all while helping someone, you know, with their quality of life. So those things really make it worthwhile to come into the office every day and, you know, work with people to make great products. I would say NRA specifically has great teams, people all over engineering and otherwise, coming together to do, you know, the work of saving patients' lives and improving their lives, is a big reason that I'm in the field. When I was younger, I was interested in medicine, but I quickly learned I'm not really cut out for that kind of path to becoming a physician. And the availability of the med device industry really spoke to me. Being an engineer, I think, just satisfies a lot of personal things that I like, that give me meaning. But being connected to healthcare still meets that other drive as well.
And then I'll pass it to you, Dr. Nast.
All right, so I think the most challenging thing is actually our healthcare system itself. And you know, the whole California system of workers' compensation and how we take care of injured workers has its own unique challenges, but there's a lot of administrative stuff, mostly having to do with prior authorizations for treatments, where many of the things that I recommend that people get for treatment are go through utilization review, a lot of denials, a lot of administrative time spent working with those denials just to get people the care that is required to help them recover. I also work with the California Medical Association. We're trying to do things from a legal perspective to try to get some of these roadblocks out of the way, because they don't add anything to the care of the patient. So that's probably the most frustrating thing. Rewarding is just being able to take the time to guide people kind of through when they get a work injury, and having them get better, or at least to as good as they can get, and then kind of helping them move on with their life, whether that means getting them back to their regular job or having to, you know, to kind of guide them in another direction. That can be rewarding because it's very difficult, and a lot of people have you know, extenuating circumstances, and I try to help out as much as I can, and be someone who they can view as like that cares about them and trusts them, which is kind of why, you know, I went into medicine in the first place.
Thank you all for sharing. I know that definitely being in the healthcare fields has its benefits, but it also is kind of challenging in ways where you're having to really be open and vulnerable with people. I mean, we all are very appreciative of you guys coming here tonight to kind of share with us those challenges and those benefits. So the next question that I have for you all is, what part of your undergraduate experience do you feel helped prepare you for your career? And you can go ahead and start with that, Dr. Lin.
Okay. So I can think of actually two things that I was involved with in undergrad. Like I think that helped me for my career. One was being a double major and needing to finish 2 degrees in 4 years. So that really, you know, early on as an undergrad, you learn about time management, how to schedule your classes, and then how to, do what needs to be done so you can, complete your degrees. So that's one thing. And the second thing for me was being involved in some college campus activities, especially taking on a leadership role, because in that capacity, you learn to work, with other people, and you'll say you have a project that's going on, or there's some campaign that you're doing. You really learn early on that nobody can do everything him or herself. So you really need to, basically how to be a leader, but also how to be a team player. And that's reflective of how the healthcare system is. That when the patient, enters the healthcare system, there are many individuals involved. So we, to get the best outcome, we have to work together. So that interpersonal skill part, which is something you don't learn in the classroom, you have to learn outside the classroom, and by being involved with activities, in activities with other folks.
So for me, I think as an engineer, it's a little more straightforward. Engineering classes are, you need to take a big course load and manage that and graduate, and then you can be an engineer. It's not always applicable, but there are a few things that USC especially did that are relevant to what I do every day. One was a few good elements of biostats that we have to do in that biomedical engineering curriculum that correspond to how we analyze data for knowing if we're making parts the way we need to, and if we meet our specs, basically. And then also Dr. Loeb's class about medical device regulation really paved the way to understand how the FDA works, as well as the European Union, back in the old days before MDR anyway. So those things gave me a good leg up. Some of those things are easy to teach yourself, but learning it at USC was definitely a good experience.
So I had kind of an interesting experience. So I wasn't really sure, what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was an undergrad. So I had to go volunteer at what was then LA County USC Hospital as a sophomore to really see what was going on. It was totally crazy there, but I loved it, and that kind of made the decision for me. But I had pledged fraternity right away. So I was a fraternity member, Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity, and that really prepared me to deal with all kinds of people, because I was not dealing with people who were going into medicine, that's for sure. And I had a group through my major, which was, I don't think they have this major anymore, psychobiology. And I had the group, like that major group, and then I had my fraternity brothers. And between those two, I think I got to deal with a lot of different people, learn a lot of leadership skills that I really carried on with me through residency, and especially in the Air Force. So USC really helped me in that manner.
It's definitely great to hear that you're able to find kind of that balance between like studying and also being with like your frat brothers and doing whatever y'all were doing in the frat activities. But I feel like it's always good to have like that balance in between the two, especially as an undergrad student. So then the next question that I have for you guys is, I know that clinical and lab experience is usually necessary to secure a role in that industry. So do you have any tips or advice for students who are trying to get direct experience in like a clinical setting or research with a professor, or just any type of experience in the health field that they could get kind of their feet wet and figuring out if this is the role in the industry that they want to go into? And we'll start with you, Dr. Lin, again.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that most definitely, if you're considering field, kind of roll up your sleeves, go either you can do shadowing, or do some kind of internship. So be physically, while you're undergraduate, be in the field and see how it is actually practiced, and determine if you like it or not. Something I didn't learn when I was undergrad was that there are actually these internship opportunities are actually paid, so I was never paid for any of my internships, volunteering or stuff I did. but they are paid internships, for undergrads, as in many healthcare systems. So again, if you're considering the field in healthcare, definitely as early as possible, go apply for these programs, and they're often, these programs are often, the applications fill like a year in advance. So you got to do that early. So don't wait until you're a junior or senior. Just do it early. And then
Yeah,
you
as
also get
a
to meet people, and they'll give you advice on how to, which school to apply to, which programs to apply to, what you need in your application package.
in the industry side, I think internships are very important. Engineers obviously want to do various types of engineering internships, but there's other sides of being in industry supporting healthcare as well. Clinical research, biostatistics, a lot of things in the support side, marketing, legal, basically most majors correspond to types of things that industry wants. But in terms of labs and maybe some hands-on skills, in the engineering side, that is very useful. Some of that you have to get in research projects, maybe extracurricular ones like design teams. Some of the engineering labs may hit on stuff. It kind of depends on the program. But in my experience, I was on the USC autonomous underwater vehicle team, and that gave me a little bit of exposure that helped me grow my CAD skills that led to internships that led to getting my first full-time job.
Right. So like I said before, I did volunteer at County USC, and it's probably changed, but back then they let me do a lot of stuff as an undergraduate, which was really fun, and that helped out making a decision, and probably look good on my applications as well. I did do some basic research with one of my my favorite professor in psychology. We did some neuroscience research involving basic research with rat brains. Got like a poster presentation regarding that, and just had a great mentor in that professor as well. And then I also, the only like consistent paid employment that I had throughout my time at USC was on Saturdays. I worked at USC MedCorps. I don't know if that's still going, but that was on campus, and kids from the surrounding high schools would come, and these were kids who were interested in healthcare careers, and we would help them with their science and math classes. And even though it was really tough to get up early on some of those Saturdays, it was very rewarding. And most of medicine is teaching. A lot of it is teaching, so it helped to kind of get that teaching experience too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I know that it is very hard to get up on Saturdays, but I also know that it does come out to be beneficial at the end. So then the next question I have for you guys is, oftentimes students who are like applying for internships and stuff hear about the separation between hard skills and soft skills. What soft skills do you think are crucial to your profession and that you've been able to kind of adapt and develop through your time in your profession?
I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier about communication, working with other team members. I think so. One of the major causes of any kind of adverse healthcare outcome is miscommunication. So the ability to either verbally or in written form communicate the right information, that's critical. So that's one of the skills. And again, these are things that you just have to do it and get experience and get feedback. So that, to me, that's one of the kind of the skill that more of a soft skill that you would need in healthcare. Again, just boils down to communication. So such as think twice before you send that email. proofread everything you send out electronically, be it a report or any kind of a text message you're sending back to a colleague that's that's involving a patient.
I would agree as well. Communication is a key thing. We have our interns do presentations as well, so technical communication and being able to, have good public speaking skills also matters in industry. Being able to tailor your message to different audiences, if it's your team, your boss, someone who's a few levels above you, external physicians, you kind of have to know what matters to each person and why, and how to meet each need separately. And yeah, being able to work with people of different backgrounds. I think that's one of the strengths of industries where you have people from different places with different educational backgrounds and at different levels. And everyone kind of has different needs and biases, and just being able to navigate that takes some level of soft skills.
And so like I've always been an introvert, and so and I recognize that, and so I have to talk to people all day long, and so usually after I have to recognize like that I need to decompress, and then how I can be a better physician and better listener when I know I have to take care of myself so that I can be more present for the patients, and like really looking at like listening and really being able to tell like where people are coming from and what their concerns are, and not interrupting them and letting them tell you what's going on is so important. And then also, and more from my time in the Air Force, but just being fair and not and kind of wisely listening to all different viewpoints before making snap decisions. It's just things that you pick up along the way. I mean, people can really pick up when you're not listening, or when you don't care. I mean, people can tell when you don't care, and that can immediately ruin any kind of therapeutic relationship that you're trying to establish.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Because I know, like, even the professors, they could tell for sure when students are not listening and stuff like that too. But now we're going to go ahead and open up to students in the Zoom if they have any questions. And so you could go ahead and drop it in the chat if you don't feel comfortable speaking out loud. If not, you can use the raise hand function on Zoom to raise your hand and ask your question. Somebody asked in the chat, Dr. Lin, what pushed you to specialize in pathology?
Um, so that's interesting. Actually, I originally did not want to be a pathologist. I originally wanted to be an internist, so be an internal medicine doc. And just it's through, I think it just adds, and I did actually start my training in internal medicine. After my first year of internal medicine training, while I enjoy internal medicine, I've kind of realized I am not a clinic person, meaning that I, seeing 20 patients in clinic a day. For me, I felt like, with given a limited amount of time, I could not take care of all their problems for them. So, and then I was kind of found out that, well, I do find the diagnostic side of medicine more intriguing than the treatment side. And then I had done actually a rotation in the lab, and I decided, oh, you know what, this is what I want to do. So I actually switched after my first year from medicine into pathology. And another thing is that I think one of your questions in the email was about what's a common misconception about your field. So when I tell people I'm a pathologist, 9 times out of 10 they ask me, like, do you work at the medical examiner as like the TV show CSI? And just to kind of that is a type of pathologist, although that's only a small subset of pathologists that are forensic pathologists. So pathologists are involved in all kinds of laboratory tests, including fluids, tissues, blood bank, And obviously forensics, it's a sub area within our field. We have a pretty broad field. So that's how I ended up in pathology. And then so I switched my training program from internal medicine to pathology.
I think we're all kind of disappointed that it's not like CSI, but it's okay. The next question we have is, what would you say is the split between males and females in your respective fields? So whichever of y'all want to answer this question can go ahead and do that.
Okay, so my medical school graduating class was 60% female, 40% male students. And if I remember we looked up which areas everybody's going to. I actually have more female classmates that went into surgical fields. And I don't know what the current, the AAMC data is on the number of male and female students, but even when I was in school, my class had more female students than male, and they were entering the fields that are historically being considered more male dominant, such as surgery. But I work with plenty of physicians, including some surgeons, and many of them are female. So I don't think there is a huge gender difference within medicine, at least in our in the fields for surgical versus non-surgical.
So for biomedical engineering at USC, I remember I graduated about 10 years ago, and I think the class was also about 50-50. Other engineering disciplines are sometimes less gender balanced, but I would say here at Inari, I believe we're somewhat close. I think a little more male, but close to 50-50 on the engineering side. Marketing is probably 50-50. Sales, it seems to be around 50-50. In clinical, I think a little bit more female dominated. So there's different teams and it varies, but every team definitely has some level of gender balance, but some are more close to 50-50.
So when I finished my OBGYN residency in the year 2000, there was just starting to be a shift from more men in the field to women, and then now it is very much female dominated, and to be a male in OBGYN, is kind of special. I mean, it was always special, but it's more special. And in the field of occupational environmental medicine, there's just not that many of us, but as far as I can tell, it's probably about 50-50, even among the people who've been doing it for a while. So.
Thanks for all answering that question. This one I'm going to target to you, Dr. Nast, just because you did talk about your experience working with the professor and doing research with him. So this question is, I'm not sure how to reach out to professors for lab opportunities. Are there any tips that you have to help a student reach out to a professor?
I'd say the first thing is to look at what their research is, look at their publications, look at their area of what they're doing in their lab, because you have to be interested in that, because otherwise it's not going to be any fun at all. I mean, if you're going to work hard and spend time, you want to make sure it's something that you're interested in, and then be familiar with that. So then when you go talk to them, they'll hopefully be impressed because you have read some of their publications and can talk to them about it. And just most of them are going to be happy to have a student helping out in the lab. And it shouldn't, in my experience, it was not a difficult thing. There was a lot of opportunities. It was mostly just finding something that interested me that one of my professors was also working on. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, it should. Most professors should be pretty happy to have students helping out.
The next question I think we'll target to you, Behram, is, do you think it's ample opportunities for people with a business degree that want to work in healthcare? For example, someone who wants to work in medical sales device or medical device sales or other opportunities that relate to health and healthcare, but not direct patient care?
Yeah, I think there are. Medical device sales is certainly a way in. And I believe pretty lucrative because people make commission-based income on that. So if you're a good salesperson and you can handle technical knowledge, then that is a good career path for people who really want to work in hospitals often, but not as an actual healthcare employee. Um, I would say I think medical device sales is typically difficult to get into. I think people often start in sales or some other aspect of medical devices and work their way in, often as like a clinical rep. And being a clinical rep may or may not be easy from a business background. I'm not really sure about that. There's also the marketing side. Marketing often has entry-level positions in this industry, and someone with a business background will definitely have, a decent background for that.
And then the next question again is kind of targeted to you, Behram, but I think we could also kind of use Dr. Lin and Dr. Nast's opinion on it too. But just kind of what are the current and future trends that you see in technology being applied to your field?
On the engineering side, I mean, there's always improvements to the things we use to make products. In our case, a lot of metals and polymers. We get these often, out of research that comes from universities. Eventually, they're made at some production scale, and then we can start using them. And it really depends what we're trying to do. In a lot of spaces, I haven't worked in this, but neurostimulation and other electrical stimulations, they combine a lot of engineering disciplines and target in different places. And they're getting a lot of different types of good outcomes for different, issues. Also, I think in the chat, someone had asked about, AI. AI is used with a lot of radiology focused companies to do automatic disease identification or giving physicians like guidance, and also to identify things that are often misunderstood or overlooked in something like CT scans. It can be used for pulmonary embolism or stroke detection, which increases patient, capture, where sometimes they're underdiagnosed.
And then Dr. Lin, if
Yeah.
you want to try and attempt the question too.
Yeah, and also, so one thing that we hear a lot about is this physician is, are we going to be replaced by AI? Am I going to be out of a job? That's something that's been talked about. My personal take on it is that the answer is no. I don't think healthcare workers will be replaced by AI. What AI will do is make me more productive. Either for screening, just for, let's say, for any kind of examination or assessment for screening purposes, and also as kind of a spell check, a kind of a second pair of eyes, reviewing my work. So I don't think AI is going to replace healthcare workers, but it will increase, or hopefully it will increase our productivity. And just because we have more people that need healthcare and only limited number of healthcare workers, and so used right, I think AI will be a tremendously powerful tool that will make us more productive. So short answer, I'm not worried about losing my job, but I'll probably be more productive, hopefully, with AI.
So in what I do now, probably the biggest help that AI could be is with charting. Charting is probably one of the most onerous, time-consuming things that we have to do, but it's necessary to provide a good medical record and for, of course, for billing purposes. But so some of the other physician that I work with, she uses a scribe, which is an actual human being who comes in and basically writes all the notes while she's seeing the patients. I don't do that. I still manage to write good notes, but I do occasionally make mistakes or forget to do something. And I know that there's products now where the AI is listening to the encounter and then creates a note for you, and you look it over and make sure that it's good. And I think that technology has a lot of promise. And also in preparing reports, when I have to do summaries when somebody's completed their treatment and their injury is permanent, have to create a report. And it could also be helpful for that. I haven't quite picked it up yet, but I think it has a lot of potential. And of course, that's not going to replace me, because I don't know how an AI could sit there and listen to somebody for 20, 25 minutes and help reestablish a therapeutic relationship after they've somehow suffered some some kind of disrespect at the hands of the healthcare system. I don't think there's any substitute for a person working with another person on those types of issues.
Thank you for sharing that. I definitely agree too. The next question is, I'm a graduate student in healthcare data science, but they have never learned knowledge about healthcare before. Since there are many different ways that you can go into healthcare, they're asking, I guess, what insight or how do you get insight into the industry?
I'll just say that. So I believe most major healthcare systems have like an informatics department. So I think probably the best thing to do is try to meet somebody or just who's in that field, like a healthcare informaticist, and and ask them and give you kind of some pointers on how to get into the industry, be it again do an internship or do or there's some kind of perhaps more entry level jobs that they can at least get the experience to apply what they've learned in school in the healthcare setting.
I would say any large healthcare organization, whether it's academic or industry, nonprofit or whatever, is doing or has a large research base, has a need for data scientists to crunch the numbers and translate the raw clinical findings into something that's decisionable that you can use to to make management decisions or for publication, for quality.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for answering that. The next question is, I think we'll kind of target this to Dr. Nass again, just because I know you talked a little bit about how you're able to volunteer when you were a sophomore, I guess, in the LA General Hospital. So just for somebody that doesn't have much of like a background in health, how would you advise them to match up with other people who already have experience and be able to kind of network with those individuals?
So I mean, most hospitals do have some kind of a volunteer program set in place. Like even right now, I actually am a volunteer with the Red Cross, volunteering back at the military hospital where I used to work when I was in the military. And so you can, start with organizations like the Red Cross, and or you could engage with individual like private physician offices, either through family or friends, or even try, to go cold into these places, especially and find out, can you shadow? I mean, there are issues with that. There are hurdles, but it's the only way you're gonna get some firsthand knowledge and get kind of really see for yourself what's going on, directly in in the practice of medicine.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that.
So I just want to add, so my healthcare system, we have actually institutional-wide program for undergrads. Let me see if I can, it's called Inspire. Let me see if I can copy the link and paste it in the chat box. So let me see if I can get that. And basically it's a program here. Okay, here it is. Let me copy the link. Let me see if I can share it in the chat screen. Okay, can you guys see it?
Yes, we
So if
can.
you click on the link, it's a program where students can apply, and then the office will then match you with a scientist who's, working on a particular field that may be of interest to you. So please go to the webpage and you can, apply for the, some are actually for high school students, but there are others, I think, also for, so yeah, the 2024 program has been closed, but if you just, check regularly, the 2025 program should be starting soon.
Thank you for sharing that link, Dr. Lin. The next question is, hi everybody. A lot of the positions I see for companies working on medical devices or biotech often require a graduate degree as a minimum. What advice do you have for somebody who isn't necessarily confident about going to graduate school? Are there other roles that don't require a graduate degree, or do you think it's worth it to go to grad school?
I can take this, I guess, on the industry side. For engineering, I've never seen that as a requirement, and I don't think it should be a requirement. So I always assume they weren't referring to that. I think in a lot of clinical, like clinical trial teams and people who crunch the numbers, some are a little bit PhD skewed. As far as master's degrees, I don't think for a lot of those types of jobs they specifically help. It really depends. If you don't want to go to graduate school, I don't think you should do it just to get into the industry. Maybe being a little bit more on the business side, like marketing, it might be a relevant way in. Also, data science, data analysts don't need to have graduate degrees as well.
And then I guess the final question that we have is there a way that you, or are there opportunities that allow you to work in health with a business degree? And if you know of that, how is the best way to go about finding them and then breaking into that industry specifically?
I would say marketing and sales are the main ways. For sales, coming in through another side that's customer facing or from another non-healthcare sales background is pretty common.
So, all healthcare organizations need administration, because that's really what makes it work. And so I've seen people mostly with MBAs or Master's Health Administration who are hospital administrators or clinic administrators or service line administrators. So that there's definitely a big need for it, but I've seen mostly those two degree types. So you definitely need a graduate level pretty much for that type of leadership role.
I believe, I don't know if USC still has it, but I believe at one point USC had a Master of Medical Management MMM program. I don't know if that's still being offered, but that's, so one of the areas that are a master level, program that's tailored towards managing medical practices. So that would be helpful too. And actually do know a couple of physicians who went back to get their MMM degrees just so they can take on more of an executive and leadership role, in their healthcare systems.
Awesome. Thank you guys all for sharing. We'll do one last call for questions from the students in the audience. And then if there's not any other questions, if you guys have any like final words or like last thoughts that you want to share with the group, we'll go ahead and have that too. Oh, I guess there's another question for Behram. I'm interested in research and studying data science at USC. Wondering what kind of roles or paths they can do with that.
I would say at any med device company, probably pharma companies as well. If you look for jobs that say data science, data analyst, insights, sometimes clinical insights. These are teams that crunch big or small data sets. There's so many types of data and ways to look at it that are often using real world data or sometimes internal data and try to just crunch metrics. So if you look for those kind of keywords on job pages, then you should be able to have a good amount of jobs to apply for. As far as standing out in those, I don't have much experience with that as other than to say if you have good projects from your coursework, then that will look good on a resume and an interview.
Awesome. Another question, I guess this kind of relates more towards our younger audience. Do you have any advice regarding choosing a major? I know especially for y'all that are doctors, there isn't really a major requirement to go into pre-med, but just if they're considering going into the healthcare field or into health graduate school, do you have any advice for what major that they should be pursuing?
What you said is absolutely correct. That you obviously do need to meet the requirements for for medical school application, but you don't have to be a science major. I would say being a non-science major does help you stand out in the application and an interview process. Uh, and that's just not medical school. That also gets it later on in residency and fellowship. Because when I do interview an applicant for residency, if I do look through their CV and I find out their undergraduate study was in something else, I'll be very curious. Oh, can you tell me, kind of what your undergraduate experience was like, and how you see that applying to your now chosen career in medicine. So my advice is study what you like what you want to learn. Um, and then that's going to be part of you, and then you can use that when you enter the healthcare profession to make you a better healthcare provider.
Yeah, your undergrad time is like too short, too valuable to like spend it doing too much time, something that doesn't interest you. Um, you're gonna have to do the pre-requirements to go to med school anyway, regardless of what you study. I think the most valuable thing is I was one class short of a Spanish minor, and I did do enough Spanish and went to Spain with the USC program for the summer school, and so I'm pretty solid. And about 50% of my patients speak Spanish only, and I can tell you it's a heck of a lot easier to take care of them when I can talk to them, not have to wait for interpreters. And that's actually helps connect with them better. So languages are good, the arts, anything to round yourself out and make sure that because it's your time to actually like educate yourself and become a worldly person, hopefully.
And then another question that we have in the chat is, would you have any advice on handling industry interviews? What key points should you take to an interview?
I think I would say talk about projects that you've done. Hopefully, some sort of extracurricular, maybe a really good project for a class, or research that you do on campus. Anything where you show ownership of something and are able to articulate what you did and how. I think that's a good general plan.
I don't know really what to say other than like, I think I've largely blocked my med school interviews and residency interviews out of my mind because it was so stressful, but not as stressful as when I had to do the OBGYN oral boards but so there's just be prepared, be organized and prepared is probably, that's for almost anything in general. If you kind of know the game plan before you have to play the game, then that's going to be an advantage to you.
Yeah, just be genuine during your interview. I think that's just the best advice. Just be yourself. Interview. Another thing for interviewees good to know is that there are actually rules when conducting interviews for jobs. Basically, there are questions that you can ask, and there are questions the interviewer should not ask. And so, if you were asking an appropriate question, you have to think about a way to kind of answer it in a manner that's best for both parties. So just something to keep in mind, that it has happened to me in the past before, being asked a question that's probably inappropriate and not applicable to why I'm there, the whatever job or position I was applying for.
Yeah, that having sat on the side, being interviewed, but also interviewing people for jobs, like there's things that you can't ask them, but like if they tell them to you, like you can't really do. There's things you probably shouldn't tell people necessarily. When you're already asking, like, hey, I have this medical issue and I can't do this, that, or the other thing. Like, I wasn't going to ask you that, and I really didn't need to know that. But now that you told me, that's probably not the best thing, you know.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's hard when it comes to interviews and everything else along that. But this is the perfect opportunity for me to plug in that we are having the mock interview night tomorrow on Zoom with the USC Career Center, where you kind of have the opportunity to do a 10-minute virtual chat with our alumni experts and practice questions, and they'll provide you feedback and everything else too. So if you guys go on Handshake, you could look that up and you'll be able to find it there. And I think that brings us to the conclusion of this panel today, with the Industry Insights Night and the Industry Insiders panel. And basically, be sure to check out our full list of industry-based programming where we're hosting it this entire semester. We're covering other industries in addition to this one. And we'll also be hosting in-person networking events and just internship search workshops. So thank you guys all for participating, especially Behram, Dr. Lin, and Dr. Nast. We appreciate your time and everything that you did for us tonight. Have a good evening, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.